Yo, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Fantasy Football Prodigy channel, and in this video, I'm going to give you my top starts of the week for week 6 of the 2023 fantasy football season. We have had some really great start of the week calls so far this year, and week 5 was no different, especially at the running back position. 3 of my 4 running back starts of the weeks were actually top 5 running backs in half PPR. We had Breece Hall. I called for the bounce back game, and he did with 26.9 points against that Denver Broncos defense that isn't so great right now. In half PPR, 26.9 points. The running back 3 on the week. Devon Achane was another start of the week of mine. Running back 4, 21 points in half PPR. And then David Montgomery was the running back 5 with 19.9 points in half PPR. And then we also did pretty well at the tight end position as well. I highlighted Sam Laporta last week, who finished as the tight end 3 in week 5 with 18.2 points. And then I even called for a Darren Waller bounce back. He had 12.6 points in half PPR, was the tight end 8 on the week. So we'll take that. And I think in week 6 we can do even better. So make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and let's get right into it. We're going to start with the quarterback position, where my first start of the week is Matthew Stafford of the LA Rams. He has actually been playing phenomenal this season, but you wouldn't know it based on his fantasy output. He's put up a ton of yardage. He's looked great. He just hasn't had the touchdowns. Last week in week 5, he got Cooper Kupp back. So we had Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, Tutu Atwell at that receiving core, Tyler Higbee at tight end. Kyron Williams is still in the backfield, and a lot of the touchdowns have been going to him. But I think eventually we're going to see some of those touchdowns go to Stafford. And we already saw that happen a little bit last week with Cooper Kupp back in the lineup. Stafford was able to have his first multi-touchdown game of the year with 2 touchdowns. Had 16.9 points in Fantasy Pro scoring, was the quarterback 14 on the week. Now in week 6, he's taking on the Arizona Cardinals. This is a smash matchup. He has all those weapons, and I think just with the weapons returning, mainly Cooper Kupp, with Puka Nacua playing really well, and I just think with the natural kind of flow of things, I think the touchdowns will eventually go a little bit more in Stafford's favor at some point. So a big game is waiting for Matthew Stafford, and I think this is the week that it happens in week 6 at home against the Arizona Cardinals defense, which he can definitely exploit. He is a quarterback 1 this week, a lower quarterback 1, but I would not be shocked if we talk about him as one of the top quarterback plays on the week. So unless you have one of those locked-in top guys, like a Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Mahomes, who already played type of thing, I would consider playing Matthew Stafford. And moving on to our next quarterback start of the week, we're going to go with Justin Fields of the Chicago Bears. And it's kind of funny, when I was naming off a few must-start quarterbacks, the name Justin Fields popped into my head, but it's like, what do we make of this guy? Last year, he looked dreadful to start the season. Then down the stretch, he looked like he was, insane. He was so good. He got drafted super high this offseason during the draft season. He comes out weeks 1 through 3, just looks terrible. Wasn't really running the ball a ton, a little bit, but not as much as we were hoping. In weeks 4 and 5, though, especially week 4, in a much better matchup than he had any of the first 3 weeks, he looked actually good as a passer, had 4 passing touchdowns, didn't do much on the ground, but that was enough to make him the quarterback 3 on the week, almost 29 points, according to Fantasy Pro scoring. And then in week 5, against Washington, not as bad of a defense as Denver, but he was still able to put up 4 passing touchdowns, back-to-back 4 passing touchdown games, and he actually did a little bit on the ground. He had 57 yards, kind of like we saw in week 1. He was at 59 yards, so we like to see him get above 40 to 50, maybe even more rushing yards, so we like to see that, and he was the quarterback 1 on the week. So it's like, is this guy a must-start? In my opinion, he is essentially a must-start, especially based on the matchup. It's hard to find, if you have him in a single quarterback league, it's hard to imagine you have someone that you're going to start over him. So in week 6 against my Minnesota Vikings, I think he's going to keep this hot streak going. 3 games in a row of top quarterback production. The Vikings defense is not very good. And I think Justin Fields can definitely exploit this matchup, get the ball to DJ Moore down the field. Their running back room is a little bit banged up right now, so we might see Justin Fields be even more involved in the running game, or they might lean on him a little bit more in the passing game, and I just don't think the Vikings defense can really stop this guy. So I really like Justin Fields as a mid to high quarterback 1 play with as much upside as anyone in the league. We're going to move on to the running back position, and we're going to start with Raheem Mostert, running back of the Miami Dolphins. This is probably a guy that you're already starting. But a couple weeks ago, he had a bad game. We've seen the emergence of rookie Devon Achane, who is now on injured reserve with injury. So there's kind of been some ups and downs with Raheem Mostert, but at the end of the day, He's one of the best running backs in fantasy on arguably the best offense in all of football, certainly the most productive, putting up the most numbers so far this season. And in week 6, he's taking on the Carolina Panthers, which is an amazing, amazing matchup. Like I said, no Devon Achane. Jeff Wilson should be returning from injured reserve, but I still think Raheem Mostert is going to operate as the lead back. And even if the Dolphins pull away in the first half and they don't need him much in the second half, I think Mostert can do enough on the ground, even in one half, to put up a lot of numbers. And he will obviously likely see work in the second half as well, unless it's just an absolute blowout, which it could be. But he's been phenomenal for fantasy. He's a running back one play against the Carolina Panthers, and he just has big play ability. He has a 25-point game, a 41-point game in half PPR. So this is a guy that you essentially have to put in your lineup this week. Next up, we have Alvin Kamara of the New Orleans Saints. He's taking on the Houston Texans, which over the last year and a half, whatever, has arguably been the best matchup for running backs in all of fantasy. It feels like maybe they figured some things out, but I still think it's a matchup that can be exploited. And he's come out since his suspension and been nothing but a running back one his only 2 games of the season. Through 2 games, the running back 12 and the running back 7, 14.9 and 17.2 points in half PPR. In week 4, in his first game, that was on the back of 14 targets and 13 receptions, only 33 yards. But in week 5, we saw a little bit more production on the ground, got in the end zone with a rushing touchdown, saw 3 targets, caught him all for 17 yards. So whether he gets it done through the ground or the air, I don't really care. I just think he's going to get it done in week 6 against the Houston Texans. Kamara's back from suspension. He's looked good. Fire him up as a running back one in what should be a great matchup. And my next start of the week at running back is James Cook of the Buffalo Bills. It's been an up and down season for James Cook, and the only reason I'm bringing him up is because he's coming off of a very, very down week. In week 5, he had 5 attempts for -4 rushing yards. He did have 3 for 25 through the air, but it was only 3.6 in half PPR. The running back 41 on the week. He was coming off of a running back 11, 18, and 13 finish with double-digit points. In week 6, I think he gets back more on track with that type of performance where he's going to be a running back 2, maybe a running back 1, depending on if he can get in the end zone or if he rips off a big play. I like the matchup against the Giants. I think the Bills should be able to control this game. Coming off of an ugly game against Jacksonville in London, I think they bounce back at home against the New York Giants. And this is just a matchup I think James Cook can exploit. I know in fantasy, sometimes we react week by week just watching the box score, but I do think this is a bounce back spot for James Cook. So not someone that's a must start depending on your options, but someone that I believe you should likely be sticking with unless you picked up like a Puka Nacua, Kyron Williams type of guy, and you have that extra depth where maybe James Cook isn't a start. I still think that James Cook is almost like a 99% likelihood that he should be starting in your lineup. So fire him up. I like him as a running back too, but has even more upside in this matchup in week 6. All right, we're moving on to wide receiver, and I'm going to hit you with a dynamic duo of Jacksonville Jaguars. That is Calvin Ridley and Christian Kirk. So there's a couple factors here. Calvin Ridley had a great week 1, 8 for 101 through the air and a touchdown, 20.1 points, wide receiver 6 on the week in half PPR. And then weeks 2, 3, and 4, 4.2, 5.5, 10.8 points. Didn't see a lot of targets. And last week, in week 5, he was 7 for 122 through the air. Had 17.1 points in half PPR. Even added 14 rushing yards on 2 attempts. 17.1 total points. The wide receiver 9 on the week. And in week 6, I think he's going to keep that momentum going. Especially with Zay Jones likely out. That is a big reason why I'm going with this duo as a start of the week, because if Zay Jones is out, I'm thinking that will kind of lead to a consolidation of targets where instead of a few targets going to Zay Jones, we might see, 1 or 2 targets go to Ridley or Christian Kirk or maybe even Evan Ingram. It just kind of secures their volume a little bit. And against the Colts, the matchup doesn't scare me. I think this will be a competitive game. So I think Calvin Ridley is a low wide receiver 1, high wide receiver 2 play, someone that you can definitely put in the lineup this week. And then Christian Kirk, maybe someone you're not starting each and every week. I think he's a solid play this week. He's been in double digits each of the last 4 weeks, 16.5, 13.4, 12.4, 11.4. Those are his scores in half PPR the last 4 weeks. And like I said, this play in particular, I'm playing Calvin Ridley no matter what. But if Zay Jones is out, which as of this recording, Friday the 13th at 1:40 p.m., Zay Jones is expected to not play on Sunday. So if Zay Jones is out, I think that really secures Christian Kirk's volume. So I would play him as kind of like a low wide receiver 2, high wide receiver 3, someone you can throw in the flex. So yeah, fire these guys up. Next up, we have DJ Moore of the Chicago Bears. I'm stacking him with Justin Fields. This is probably someone that you are playing regardless. But DJ Moore, he's had a weird career. Everyone knows he's very, very, very talented. But based on his career in Carolina, the quarterback play seemingly was the thing that was always holding him back. Then he signs with the Chicago Bears, and Justin Fields starts the year pretty poorly. And it's like, is it happening again? Will he be productive? What's going on with DJ Moore? Will we ever see DJ Moore, flourish? And the last 2 weeks, when Justin Fields has been playing well, that is correlated with DJ Moore being the wide receiver 7 and the wide receiver 1 on the week, including a 45-point half PPR performance on Thursday Night Football last week against Washington. 8 for 230 through the air, 3 touchdowns. He could have even had a bigger game. There was a couple plays where he got missed on a throw. There was one where he was running up the sideline and they called him out, which I don't think he was. And I believe that wasn't one of the drives where he scored. So I think that could have been another touchdown for him right there, if I'm not mistaken. And in week 6, this just comes down to the matchup. I think Justin Fields can exploit this matchup, so I think DJ Moore can also do well in this game against my Minnesota Vikings. We don't have anyone on defense that can hang with this guy, and he is their main number 1 target. So fire up DJ Moore as a borderline must-start wide receiver 1. We saw his upside the last couple weeks. If you're thinking of playing someone who's more of a safe play, I like to shoot for upside, and DJ Moore, as we've seen the last 2 weeks, has insane upside. So, if you're playing a guy that you're confident will get you 10 points, I would leave that on the bench. Go with DJ Moore because I think he's a pretty safe play this week too, just because of the matchup. But he has insane upside in a divisional home matchup against my Minnesota Vikings. And we're going to keep the ball rolling with Adam Thielen, wide receiver of the Carolina Panthers, former Minnesota Viking. He's having a bit of a career resurgence as the clear wide receiver 1 for the Carolina Panthers for rookie quarterback Bryce Young and that one game of veteran quarterback Andy Dalton. Since week 1, he's been phenomenal. 16.9, 26, 11.7, and 22.2 points in half PPR. He's been a wide receiver 2 or better every single week the last 4 weeks, including a wide receiver 4 overall and wide receiver 5 overall finish. Some of that production has come in garbage time, but in week 6 against the Miami Dolphins, there should be garbage time production to be had. The Miami Dolphins are arguably the best team in the league right now, while the Carolina Panthers are arguably the worst team in the league. So I do think they'll be trailing, and there will be an opportunity for garbage time production. But either way, I think Adam Thielen is going to be involved. They're not going to be able to run the ball as much as they probably want to, especially with Miles Sanders injured. So I think Adam Thielen is going to absorb a lot of targets in this game. He should be a nice safe play. If he gets in the end zone, you're going to be extremely happy that you played him. And the Miami matchup doesn't scare me. I think that he can kind of find some spaces against this defense and get his. So I like Adam Thielen a lot as a very, very solid wide receiver 2 play in week 6. My last start of the week is Jordan Addison of the Minnesota Vikings at the wide receiver position. There's a couple things here. Obviously, star wide receiver Justin Jefferson put on injured reserve, gonna miss this game, gonna miss a few games. Jordan Addison has been great when on the field, and he's gonna see plenty of opportunity with no Justin Jefferson in week 6. I think that we're gonna see Addison probably get his season high in targets. Right now it's 9. I could definitely see him hitting double digits. The only reason he wouldn't is because he's dealing with a bit of an injury. As of this recording, he's expected to play. If there are reports that he's going to be limited or is still kind of dealing with the injury, maybe limit your expectations. KJ Osborne is another wide receiver for the Vikings who should step up. And if Addison is banged up, maybe we see those targets go to Osborne. But Addison, to me, is the higher upside play between those two. So if he's healthy, if he's active, if he's good to go, I think we could see him hit on some big plays against the Chicago Bears, a defense that definitely can be beat. Last week against the Chiefs, he was 6 for 64 and a touchdown. He's definitely flashed this year, had some big touchdowns. It just hasn't been consistent. And without Justin Jefferson, I think they're going to need to rely on him where he should have a good game here. And I think if he can hit on a big play, you'll be glad you started him. So wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 play with upside. Someone where if you're dealing, there's not too many teams on bye right now, but if you got a bye week, got injuries, someone you can throw in there and you might be glad that you did. And then we're going to move on to tight end. We're going with the same team, the Minnesota Vikings. This is a guy that I feel even more confident in because Addison is dealing with the injury. You have KJ Osborne there at wide receiver as well. I'm not sure who's going to be the lead receiver between those two, but honestly, all the targets might just go to TJ Hockenson. This is a guy you're probably starting already, but he's had a couple pedestrian games in a row, 3.4 and 7.6 points in half PPR. You put him in your lineup. He's a top tight end play this week. Tight end is a gross position. Unless you have Travis Kelce, your tight end is going to have his ups and downs. And in week 6, it's the same matchup as Addison, the Chicago Bears. I think it's a defense that Hockenson can do work against. And without Justin Jefferson, his target volume should be even more secure. He's seen 9, 8, 11, 3, and 8 targets. So 8+ targets in 4 out of 5 games. I think that is almost a guarantee in week 6 as long as he's on the field and doesn't get injured or anything. So he's a safe play at tight end, which you can't say about a lot of people. And he does have, quite a bit of upside. He doesn't have that George Kittle upside most weeks where he can get, rip off a 60-yard touchdown or get 3 touchdowns. But you never know. With no Justin Jefferson, we'll see. Maybe they get in the red zone a lot and he's hyper targeted. But at the very least, he has some pretty good upside in week 6. So he's a top tight end play. Fantasy Pros has him as the tight end 2 on the week. So I'm totally fine with that. Only ranking Travis Kelce above him. That's fine by me. So fire him up as a must-start tight end 1. TJ Hockenson is someone that you're probably starting, and if you don't have him, you're not able to acquire him. Next up, we have Zach Ertz of the Arizona Cardinals. This is a guy that you might not think about starting or might even be on your waiver wire. And he's a guy that I think you can start in week 6 against the Rams. He has quietly been somewhat productive this season. He hasn't had a double-digit game, but he's had 3 games of 8, 8.5 points. He's finished as a tight end 10, 14, and 13 for 3 of these games this season. So not like super productive, but someone where if you just want a handful of points, you're going to get it. And in week 6, if he crossed that double-digit threshold, I would not be shocked. If you're dealing, I have like Darren Waller, for example. I'm thinking about playing Zach Ertz over him because Waller's dealing with that injury. Waller's in the night game. This is like the late afternoon game between the Rams and the Cardinals. So I'm thinking about picking up Zach Ertz, and if Waller isn't 100% good to go by the time the Arizona Cardinals game starts, I might just throw Ertz in the lineup and take what I can get. And it's actually not a bad matchup for tight ends. The Rams have given up some production to tight ends this year. So it might not be pretty, but I think Zach Ertz will, volume his way to a solid game for fantasy, and who knows, maybe he'll get in the end zone. Last week he did get in the end zone, only 10 yards, but it worked out where he got in the end zone. So either way, I think he'll have more targets, more yardage than last week, and I think he's a nice solid low tight end 1 play. That if you're looking for a floor, this is your guy. And that's gonna do it for this video, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Please make sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel for more fantasy football content. I will see you guys next week. Good luck in week 6. Peace out.